Welcome to another episode of Fearless Journeys Thriving in College. I'm Corinne.
And I'm Steve. In today's episode, we're delving into a topic affecting many college students, how different cultural backgrounds can influence our views on mental health and how it's addressed on Canadian college campuses.
We have two fantastic guest speakers joining us today to share their insights. Our first guest is Chie, the Manager of International Services. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And would you like to share a little bit about yourself or tell our listeners who you are?
Sure. My name is Chie Kinjo. I was born and raised in Lethbridge, Alberta, but my family, my parents immigrated to Canada in the 70s from Okinawa, Japan. After I graduated from university, I was lucky enough to go live and work in Japan for 12 years. Teaching English and social studies. And then after that little jaunt in Japan, I decided to come back home, and I was lucky enough to get a job at the college. I was originally the International Student Support Coordinator. I was promoted to the position of manager, which I've been for the past 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's great. And 12 years in Japan?
Yeah, most of my teaching career. I went to school for secondary ed.
Okay.
And then after I graduated university, I went to Japan to teach.
Mm-hmm. You still have family?
Yes, majority of my family is in Japan. So yeah.
Exciting. Do you ever get to go back?
Yes. I went back right before COVID,
okay.
which was an interesting time. But we haven't gone back since, and I'm hoping to go back soon.
Well, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And our second guest is Munir Nazam. Is that going to say that right? Perfect. International Student Support Coordinator and former student of Lethbridge College and former president of the Lethbridge College Student Association, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Munir Najam. I am currently working as International Student Support Coordinator with International Services here at Lethbridge College. I am originally from India, Delhi, the capital of India. And I moved to Canada in 2021, right after the COVID. I was a student in Lethbridge College, and I was lucky enough to be the student rep for my first year, and then I became the student body president with Lethbridge College Student Association. After that, I completed my diploma in psychology and sociology from here. Then I applied for this position. I just graduated in last April in 2023, and now I'm working with International Services.
That's awesome.
Yeah. To kick things off, let's discuss how different cultural backgrounds can shape our perceptions of mental health. Munir, could you share your perspective on this?
For sure. Mental health has different perceptions in different cultures. I am originally from India, as I mentioned, so I can talk a little bit about South Asia part. Most of the cultures in South Asia is similar. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, those kind of areas. We have similarities in food, in cultures and things like those. So I can talk a little bit about our perceptions about mental health over there. In ancient time, there was no talk about mental health. There was no mental health over there. And now things are getting changed, but it's still there are perceptions about mental health. There is a stigma about mental health. People think mental health in a different way. They think that if someone has a depression or some other kind of anxiety or something like that, they think that they have some kind of evil spirit or something. So they have those perceptions, those stigmas, and people are more afraid of the people who are having those problems or those issues. So they think these are the perpetrator, you can say, that not the. But I got a chance to study psychology here at the college, so I got to know that most of the people who deal with mental issues, they are mostly the victims of those things, not the perpetrator. In those cultures back home, people mostly think mental health as evil spirit and those kind of things. But now things are changing. So just because of the education, people are getting out. There is more open talk in families and things like those. I recently visited my back home in December, so I got a chance to visit one of my uncle who passed away recently, 2 years or a year ago. He had cancer. He has a son who is like around 18-year-old, a little kid. He's like really introvert kind of person, never went out of his home. The thing with him was he was really, really introvert, and there was some tensions between his family, his like mother and father kind of a thing as well. And he was introvert as well, so he was just in the house. He was just, for the most of the part, he was just in his room or in his class. Not any of his, he was hardly any of his friend or anything coming to visit him or anything like that. So I recently visited him. I got to know that he got some kind of mental issues, and I myself heard like people still were talking about those things, like they were saying he got some kind of evil spirit. You have to be careful of him. But no, he's a little kid. He's like 18-year-old. He's really nice kid. He just cannot adjust those part. His recent, like all of a sudden death of his father, and the issues, the upbringings that he has with his family, right? So, but still people have those stigma around these mental issues. He was really depressed. He was just having those issues, and now his mother is having him to the psychologist and people like those he's going through with the sessions and the trainings. Now he's feeling better. But I got to know, like, some people were talking to me, they were like, no, you have to be careful of him. He's still like mad or something, you know, he got some kind of spirit or something. People have those talk. So I feel this is like, still there is a stigma behind these kind of things over there as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is there a difference that you might see in the urban areas instead of the rural areas? Is there quite a difference?
Yes, there is a difference between urban areas and the rural areas. As I said, in the ancient time, most of the people were living in rural areas. Hardly there were people who were educated. Now people are educated over there. They have more knowledge about what is depression, what is anxiety, how to treat those people, rather than just bringing them to some religious people, leaders or something like that. You know, there are some people who have like hardly any knowledge about mental issues, and they think they're gonna treat them. I heard like someone just tied him up once. He visited some religious person or someone, and he was just doing some kind of weird things. I was shocked to hear about those things. Yeah, so there's a difference.
Jia, do you knowing that you associate with quite a range of international students, do you see the same in different countries?
Yes. When I was living in Japan, it was kind of similar experience that Munir had. Mental health wasn't very discussed when working in the school system. And I think in India too, and most Asian cultures, there's a tremendous amount of pressure put on students to be successful and to, get to be educated. And there's entrance exams to like junior high school, university, and, to get into those like brand name schools. Mm-hmm. And so the stress and anxiety that, students feel at such a young age, like now it's like, I worked at an international school that was K to 8 or K to 9, and there was an entrance exam, or like a entrance testing, I guess, for the kindergarten students. It was just play and seeing how long they cooperate and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, there's still a lot of pressure. Like, that the parents were prepping like 4 or 5-year-olds to, get into the school. So, and it's just kind of, I think it's culturally like just attributed, that's just how it is.
Right.
And recently, it's being addressed more in the media and in the news as it's okay to have, and they're trying to normalize it a little bit, but there is still stigma. I remember my parents mentioning it before about like their generation and like their parents' generation, where taking a pill was looked down upon.
Oh, wow.
In Japan. And because like if you need to take a pill, it means that you had mental health problems, like you had to control how your brain works because you weren't normal. And especially in Japan, like being a part of the group is such a big part of like the mentality, Japanese culture. So yeah, and so it was kind of mind blowing. And then I worked at an international school where it was like half teachers not from Japan and then half Japanese teachers. And the difference in how the foreign teachers, I guess, would approach student discipline or classroom management was very different, because I think the foreign trained teachers were more aware, because we take teacher training where that addresses like learning disabilities and attention deficit, like what to do with hyperactive students, whereas that's not incorporated in teacher training in Japan. So it was really interesting to see. But even like work, like you should work. You don't go home until your boss goes home, the culture in Japan. So it's really hard. So, there's lots of students that do get anxiety, and they do, like in Japan, there's a term called hikikomori, which means like the people who don't leave their house, like it's just to stay in, right? And that's becoming an issue. Or people who are NEET, so not employed, educated, I forget what the other ones are, the acronym is, but, they just stay at home, or they're not working or going to school. So, and it's becoming like a social problem in Japan, but it's also, Japanese culture is shifting and recognizing that, like, mental health is really important, and to have supports there for those students. And maybe we shouldn't be putting so much pressure on these kids to decide their futures, because, it'll change.
Oh, yes,
right?
For sure. Yeah.
Especially now with like technology. So.
So, Chie, as manager of international services, what efforts has Lethbridge College made to accommodate some of these diverse perspectives?
So we know that there is like a barrier, and, it's like a lot of our international students do come from cultures where it's not discussed or even addressed. Like, like mental health is a whole new term that they come to in Canada. During orientation and during our pre-arrival webinars, we always tell the students, like, it's okay if you're stressed, if you get homesick, you get culture shock, it's okay, everyone goes through it, you're not alone. And, we do have support services on campus. Our wellness services does such a great job in supporting our students. And, we've taken, I think, really big strides in the past couple of years to help address the student population and the mental health supports, especially after COVID, because it was such a hard struggle for everyone, and staff as well. So we've tried, but I know we have more steps. A lot of it is just, I think it's just the difference in culture, in terms like centering around like how open we are, how open we've become as a society in Canada and the US, and how it's being addressed in the media more in a more positive light, and that it's okay to get support. And closing that gap with our international students, especially those who come from a country that maybe it's not as open or accepted.
I'm curious, you did mention, that it's culturally, of course, more accepted in Canada and the US, and media influences that. Do you find that influence in media for less stigma around mental health, does that go out into different countries and change some of the cultural perspectives through media?
I think so. With like how big Hollywood is everywhere, like one of the things we kind of, when I noticed when I first started as a support coordinator, is because like college life is depicted so much in the American context, like fraternities and sororities and party, and it's like so not like that, especially at Lethbridge College. We have to like close the gap a little bit in terms of like that presentation is like, like it's very different how we go to school in Canada post-secondary versus like what's depicted in Hollywood and what schools are like. There's that. But I do think like sometimes it does have a negative effect, but I think because so many TV shows and movies do address it, and even the reality shows, like contestants that are on them have addressed, like, I do have depression or anxiety or all that kind of stuff. So I think it's kind of nice. I think it's for the better in terms of like more openness, but I do recognize that there is negative influence as well. But I think for the most part, because we're allowed to talk about it openly and it's not hidden away in a dark corner, I think it's I think for the better.
Munir, do you see any of that in some of the students you talk to or some of the friends you have, in how Hollywood, let's say, has influenced mental health
Yeah, for sure. The same thing with, as Gia mentioned about Hollywood, if especially in India or South Asia, if I can talk about there is a Bollywood thing over there, and Bollywood is also like a huge industry, and they also have the similar kind of a thing. For instance, about the college life, people think what is going to happen. Like they just assume those 2 hours movie has all their life thing, right? They just want to live as the actor is living or the actress is living in that 2 hours movie, which is not the reality, right? I was reading an article or something the other day, and I found out that people's like patience time is like really decreasing day by day, and especially with these TikTok videos and reels, people just want to see everything in just 15 seconds. And same thing with these kind of things, like people have, as Gia mentioned about the entrance exams and things like those, you have to study a lot, you have to go through a long process. But nowadays people think they just want to write the exam one time, they're going to pass it. No. Especially in India, if I can talk about, like, there is a ton of population, as everyone knows. So the population also matters. And I have gone through with that phase as well, because I was preparing for my medical school exam over there. I was preparing for 2 years. I didn't go into the medical school just because there is like a 1.5 million students was writing the exams.
Wow.
And the seats in the colleges were like less than 10,000. So the chances is, I don't know what's the percentages, but it's very less, right? I got like under 60,000 rank, but still was not able to make into the college. So these things also matters. Like, people are going through with that phase, they are just giving like 1 full year, and then they think like, what's going to happen? Like, I'm 1 year behind my other peers are, they are doing something else. Someone took that mission in their privately or something,
Right.
They are doing better than me, and those things also affect mentally as well. So the patience time, as I was talking about, is just getting low and low. People just think everything to be done in like seconds. They just want you to just, I used to work at the Shoppers, and over there people used to come and they used to say, I was in the pharmacy, so they just gonna give you the prescription, and they assume that I'm gonna do it like right away in like 5 minutes or less than 5 minutes, and they don't understand how the pharmacy works. And I'm just giving you an example of the pharmacy. It's the same thing with the other industries or other life aspects as well. So they don't understand, like, their patience time is very low. They just want everything to be on like right away, which is not, I think, not right.
Yeah, and we're kind of like that all the time. If I send a message to Corinne and she doesn't answer me, it's like, what? Come on.
Well, and I was even thinking, like, our experience with mental health supports as well. Sometimes people are under the impression 1 session and I'll be better, and that it's a process.
Yes. Yeah. Everything is like a process. It takes time. You have to be like into it, and then you have to give some time to.
Yeah. So the next question for Chie. International students often face unique challenges when it comes to mental health. Could you shed some light on the challenges these students encounter?
Sure. So I think sometimes it's overlooked or forgotten about how much extra stuff that this international students have to carry on their backs when they do come. Yes, of course, they're coming to, come to the college or to come to Canada and come study, but there's also extra pressure. There's financial pressure to get a study permit in Canada. It's very expensive, especially now because of the change that was introduced at the beginning of the year. So there's financial pressure. Tuition for international students is much higher than domestic students as well. And a lot of our students, we have a good mix of like young, like high school graduates and like mature students who either have partners or dependents, like children as well. And then, so they also come and, they have to support their family as well. There's a lot of extra pressure that I think sometimes gets left off because they're just, they're seen as students, but there's also extra pressure. And, a lot of the students do come with the hopes of getting an education that will allow them to find a career path so that they're able to stay in Canada and hopefully become permanent residents or citizens of Canada. So there is that extra pressure to, take that pathway. And then in the future, hopefully maybe they can sponsor some more their extended family to come. So there is that familial pressure. There are some instances that we've heard, and this isn't just, strictly just at Lethbridge College, but where like extended families or whole towns or neighborhoods, will pull money together to send one or two students, like, high achieving students from that area to come to Lethbridge or to come to Canada to study, and I guess in quotation marks, make it as well. So there's a lot of familial pressure. I also come from like a culture where the oldest son has to take care of the family and the extended family. Thankfully, my dad is the second son of the third son or whatever, so we have it pretty easy. But I saw it because my cousin's the oldest son of the oldest son, and the pressure that he has. And then a lot of our students, just because of the currency rate and the wage differential, like they do only work part-time or they only work a certain amount of hours, but they're still sending some of their money home because that money converts into more money home. And so they're supporting family members back at home. So there's all these extra pressures. It's not like saying that domestic students don't face it, but there is extra, like with the chance of immigrating and coming to a country that, you're not necessarily familiar with. And especially if you come in the winter and it becomes minus 40 and it's dark when you wake up and it's dark when you leave school, like it's a very big shock and that they have to get used to and get adjusted. And then you have to, support family and all that kind of stuff. So like there's a bunch of extra challenges, and I went through culture shock, and sometimes I do still go through reverse culture shock coming back from Japan. I still bow when I'm on the phone. I notice it sometimes when I talk to Japanese related stuff, I'll bow and stuff. But when I came back, my first 2 years, I had a rough time readjusting, and I thought it was okay because I was born in I was raised in a Japanese household, which I thought, but that's not necessarily true. And being away for 12 years, things change. It doesn't look like it changed, but things do change. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure. So there's a lot of challenges too. And I think too, I think there's a misconception of what the cost of living is, and especially now with inflation like all over the world, and how much it actually costs to live and work here and be comfortable is very different. And like we're all like everyone is struggling, like whether or not they're international or domestic students or staff, right? So yeah, there's like just all this pressure that I think sometimes even the students aren't aware of that they're facing and that they're carrying. And when you don't realize that that's what you have and that's where your stress and anxiety come from, it's hard to kind of pinpoint what's eating at you and nagging at you at the back of your mind. So especially if you come from a culture where it's like you just need to internalize that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we see a lot of that internalization in a lot of international students that come through wellness.
Yeah.
Munir, as a past student, what advice do you have for international students navigating some of these challenges?
Yes, I completely agree with Chia that there are these challenges on campus, or whoever is coming to Canada and other campuses as well. One really good piece of advice that I would like to give to all the students, whether they are international or domestic, is that ask for help, whatever the help you need. There are tons of support on campus, in the community as well. So all you have to do is just ask for help. That's the one thing. Some people have, as I mentioned before, that they have that kind of a thing that they don't want to ask anyone. They don't want to show their emotions to anyone else. I was talking to one of my friend, and he told me that when he came to Lethbridge, he moved from Toronto or somewhere. For the first 2 days, he slept outside, like in a park, where the slide is. Yeah. So the slide was the covered kid slide, and he slept inside that slide for 2 nights. I was like, why? He was like, because he was not able to find a place or something. And he was really good. He used to, like, during those 2 days when he came, he went to the mosque too. There is a mosque over there, and there are tons of support in the community as well, like in the mosques, church, or some other religious places as well. So the people over there were saying like, why didn't you came to the mosque? You can just sleep over here for 1 night or 2 nights. There's no problem in that. But still, they have that thing in that kind of like an ego. some egos are good, but some egos are not. Like for this, you slept there 2 nights inside a kid's thing over there in the park with, it was the summertime though, but still I feel like there's nothing wrong with asking for help. In my opinion, one advice is just ask for help. There is support on campus, in the community as well. All you have to do is just ask for help.
Right.
Yeah, and we've tried a lot to break down that barrier too, because we know it's hard to ask for help, especially when it's in a second language and you're not exactly sure if you can express yourself, and sometimes you're just supposed to rough it.
Yeah.
But like we just say, like, if you don't know, come to us, like international services, like we'll figure it out, and it's okay to ask, right? It's better to ask than not know what to do, especially because how things are done in Canada and in Lethbridge is very different from like what people do in Calgary or Taber. Or
do you guys find that more people are asking for help recently? Do you see an increase there?
Yes, now I think there is an increase in international population as far since I came to college. There are people coming to me and asking for help, asking for the resources on campus where they find help. As I said, we did a welcome event yesterday, in that I specifically mentioned about the things on campus, the supports on campus, and how they can contact those areas. Still, they don't know how to contact them, then they can come up to me. I'm trying my best just to be like in front of the students more, in more engaging with the students, so that they can feel like they can relate with me. Then I was just a student. People still think that I'm a student, so I don't mind that. But there's a thing that, so they can relate with me, they can talk to me, they can come up to me, and they can ask me for help. We are trying our best to do that.
That's awesome.
That's the great thing about having Munir as the student support coordinator.
People can relate with me.
Yeah. Like they knew him on campus, and he was their leader last year. The connection is there, and he has the same lived experience that they're going through, which I think is really important in building connections. I can connect only so much, right? But I don't know what it's like to come from a different country to come study in Canada.
Right.
But Munir does.
Yeah.
So, it's great it's great having him here. Yeah. In his role.
That's good.
Yeah.
So breaking the stigma around mental health is crucial. Munir, how can students help change perceptions within their own cultural communities?
As I mentioned earlier, that in the ancient time, in our culture back home over there was no talk about mental health, but now things are changing in the urban areas, especially people are more educated. So the education is the big thing about the perception change, and how they can change this perception. Is main thing is education. They have to educate themselves, and the other thing is they have to have some kind of open conversations in their household, right? So I went home recently. I visited my family, so we were talking about that kid I mentioned earlier. So we were talking about, and I suggested them some things in my family household. We were having a dinner or something, and I discussed about I got a chance to study psychology, but my parents didn't. But I explained what it looks like, what the mental health is, and how we treat, rather than just thinking that this is something evil spirit or something, right? So some kind of open conversation in the family household as well. Like for sure, like all of the people cannot understand the thing, although they are educated. My parents, my father is a teacher, my mother is a housewife, she's also a graduate, but still they didn't got a chance to study these kind of things. There was no support when they were getting the education, as the things are changing now. And as Tia mentioned about the other things as well, like the exams and the pressure, like you have to do something in your life. You like there is a misconception over there that you have to be either a doctor or an engineer over there. If that's a thing, right? Whatever you have to do, there are just two streams you have to go, either doctor or engineer. There's nothing else. Or you're done. So those pressures, things, and people don't understand that. One other thing is I got a chance to study. There is a city called as Kota in a province called as Rajasthan in India. Over there, that city is specifically for the students over there. There are more than 500,000 students over there living in that city. Just in that city, there's like cities like full of the students like all over the India. They go there, and there's just like hostels over there in the whole city. There's no one else. There's the hostels, wardens, and then people who work there. There's like hardly anyone who has the house over there. There's just the hostels. So in that city, I just reading some articles and things. I follow some pages on Instagram as well. The suicide rate in that city especially is like really, really high, just because people go there for their exams, for their medical exams, for the engineer exams, the entrance exams, for those things. And the pressure that they have, some people are preparing for their exams from like 5 years, and then they're not still gonna go into the colleges. So, and they again fail. And then those pressures, those challenges it's so hard. And I was there for 2 years too, and I can feel that thing that's like a terror. You were just stuck in one room. You have one room. All you have to do is just study. There's no support, nothing, no mental health. And recently I was reading like in just 1 month there was 25 suicide cases over there.
In 1 month?
In just 1 month.
Wow.
So now they're doing some kind of like a thing. Wednesdays will be closed. All the coaching center. So they will do just 1 day for the mental health. But still there is that pressure. You cannot deny of that things, right? So the breaking the stigma around the mental health is crucial, and I think the education is the most important thing, and not the younger generation. I think more should be the people like my parents or their parents and people who have those things. They should be more supportive to their kids, to their people, right? Rather than just saying like you have to do that. You have to support your kid, whatever they want to do. I tried my best for 2 years, whatever I can do. I was not able to get the admission. That's what happened, right? I don't. My life is not done. I can do something else.
Yeah, and look, you're so successful right now. Right?
Yes,
for sure.
Not successful, but yeah, I'm doing something, right?
Yeah.
I cannot be a doctor, but I can be something else. So it's not something you have to be a doctor to live your life. There's something else, some other careers as well. That's the one thing.
You mentioned education. So do you think, Chia, do you see that maybe workshops around mental health issues are good? Do you guys promote that?
Yeah, we've been trying for, especially like post-COVID, to work with wellness services a little bit more, and just in general be more open with the international students, and just even if it's just letting them know it's okay. It's okay to struggle. Everyone does it. Yeah, I think we do, like the institutions, like we do play a really crucial role, because for a lot of the students, especially if they're they're coming from high school, like they're transitioning into adulthood, and like they're learning how to become an adult. I'm still learning a little bit too for me, but it's hard to ask, like even being, born and raised in Canada, like I struggled a lot to ask. But now that there's so much resources and, it's normalized to an extent on social media, and like people are like, I went through this, and then you can recognize like, hey, I have that too. Right. And so it's not just with mental health, like the other thing that we notice with international students, and I noticed when I was teaching in Japan, is a lot of people don't know that they do have a learning disability, or they do have struggles. Like there's they struggle with like how they learn, and it was really hard to kind of get over that hump. I think that was the biggest cultural barrier I faced as a teacher, was getting parents and the Japanese teachers to understand like this can be addressed. This can be like your child, the student, can be supported. There's ways to figure out what like they're struggling with and like get them the right resources, and not just like pass them off to the next one, because like that doesn't help anyone, and especially doesn't help the student, right? Because when they're an adult, they're always going to feel like, oh, something's wrong with me, and it's not actually, there's nothing wrong with them. They just learn it a different way, or they just need they need a little bit of extra help, but that's normal. Like everyone goes through it. So I think for us too, and that's the one thing that we've recognized, but yeah, there's lots of things. Like we've started a bunch of initiatives as well with wellness. Like one is Trail. I brought the poster so I could read off of it. It's called Thriving Resilience for Academics and International Life, and it's with Rana and Jean, two of the counselors in wellness services. And we kind of introduced it last year, and it was like they kind of set an agenda every week and like covered, and it was like a support group for international students. And this semester we're doing it as a drop-in. as well. So it'll start next week in the International Student Lounge, and students can bring their friends, and Jean and Rana have been great. And the nice thing with them is they're so approachable. They're very different personalities, but they're still approachable in every aspect. So we've noticed that the students who do interact with them, whether they're international or not, like they're so easy to connect with, and they have so much knowledge and like strategies that they share with the students that I think it will help overall. And then what we try to do as international, and we work a lot with the LCSA, is trying to promote more social events to build more connection, whether it's among the international students or Canadian students and staff. So we started back in I think 2021 or 2020, Unity. It's a monthly event in the cave where we provide tea and coffee and hot chocolate and drinks and snacks and board games. And it's just a time and a space where students can just hang out and, and spend time and meet. And that's tomorrow, right? The first one for next semester, this semester is tomorrow. So I'm just going to plug all of our events.
That's right.
Yeah. But a lot of it, Blue Monday, yesterday, and Doggy De-Stress, and, those kind of things, I think, because we've promoted it more, and we've promoted supports and events that allow students, paint night with LCC, and just an outlet to relieve some stress and not be alone. I think that's the biggest thing that probably came out over the past few years is isolation and feeling alone, whether even though you're around people, you can still feel alone. And I think until recently, not everyone realized that's a form of loneliness. So try to figure out ways.
That's good. Yeah, those connections really make a difference with anybody's mental health. Right?
Yeah. I was just thinking connection can be a really big way to prevent mental health conditions and concerns. So
it's also a way to overcome cultural barriers, inadvertently too, because a lot of times cultures have so much similarity. I was born and raised here, but I grew up quite with a Japanese background, and I live there. And Munir and I will have conversations where there's food that's the same, but it's just called different things in India and Japan. So, which has been kind of fun to figure out, too. And we figure out where certain things are coming from, and they're, that's the same. We do the same thing. It's just we do it this way. So it's kind of a nice way to figure out and overcome, all the diversity and connection issues, because we're more similar than not, regardless of what culture we're from. And
that's true,
right? So I saw the thing that was trending during Christmas is the Danish cookie tin, and usually there's a sewing kit inside of it, right? The tin cookie, or there's something, but there's never cookies in there. But there's always a tin.
So the same thing in India too,
right? Yeah.
Whenever you find out a cookie box or something, and then there might maybe the swing thing, something else instead of the cookies inside that.
Yeah, but that's but who knew that was so that was so universal? Right? Because that happened in our house. And back at home, back in Okinawa, when I was visiting my aunt, I opened up a tin cookie box thinking there was a sewing kit in there. So, and I think that that's what's helped with social media. There's so much similarity regardless of what country or background or culture you come from, and I hope that's helping to kind of overcome those barriers and gaps.
Kind of leads to the next question I had is, Jay, what role do you see colleges playing in kind of combating that stigma?
I think promotion, and it comes from the top down. And I think the great thing about the college is, our executive leadership, our president and, our deans and, the program chairs, they all kind of promote a more open campus, and they're visible, right? And so it kind of decreases that power distance that sometimes you see. So when I say power distance, how close someone of authority is to you, right? In Japan, a teacher, there's a very distinct, I think in India too, right? When you're there's a very distinct gap between a teacher and a student, whereas in Canada, I went to a school where we were on a first name basis with our teachers, which is, when I went to Japan, I told people just blew their minds. They're like, what? You don't call your teachers by your first name. So, but I think because like they're visible and they're around, and I think that helps decrease that power gap so that there's like approachability. So you can go and talk to the president at the college, or you can go and talk to the dean of student affairs, and you can go talk to the registrar, right? Which is kind of nice because you know who they are. Like, you know their faces. They're not just some face that randomly pops up on like a media release. Like, they're walking around the college. You know, and Stefan, like our current LCSA president, he's around. Harmamam is around. Celine is around, like the LCSA executive. Like, lots of people know who they are. And with Munir too, like he was quite visible.
Yes, he was quite active too.
Yeah, right.
Munir everywhere.
The same thing with what happened with me. So when Brad came here, and I think it was first week or something, and I was running for the president that month on that week or something like that. I was coming out of my class, and he was just walking by that, and I like there was like a thing. He saw me, I saw him, you know, that thing, and then I said hello, and then congratulated him, something like that. And then so after when I won the election, we went upstairs to meet him, and then he was like, "You are that guy who stopped me at the hallway." It's like, yes, I am that guy. So that thing in back home over there, you have to call your teacher, like let's say you are my teacher, I have to call you Steve Sir. And then you have to be respectful. You cannot just stop someone and the president of the college. And the other cultural shock was for me, I saw Brad one time. He was just in Tim Hortons line, standing like a long line back over there, and he was at the back. I was like, he's the president and CEO of Lethbridge College. He's standing in a long line. And back home over there, we, even though in a small school, like there are some people who are gonna have things for the principal or whoever the president of the school is, and he's the president. I was like, what is this? These are the cultural shocks that we see, right?
Yeah, and just like normalizing that culture and like being open, you know, during winter break, and we just got a communication to all the employees about like, you know, staying safe and you know, making sure, and like the college is always ranked really high in terms of wellness, right? So nationally. And I think it's because we do, like the college does do a great job, whether it's in our media releases or in promotions and social media, we promote the wellness and the different events. You know, it's not just academic based. And to show that vibrant college culture that we have here, I think it's also because we're quite small as a college compared to other big schools in like Calgary and Edmonton and Toronto and Vancouver. But and there is kind of a small town feel in this city. So, but I think we've been working really hard to, as a college, to overcome that. And I think that's really important, is to create that sense of community. Even if you're not an active member of it, like you still are considered a Lethbridge College, you know, part of the Lethbridge College community, even if you're just a introverted bystander, which sometimes I would like to be, but yeah, they're still part of it, and they're important. They're just as important as, you know, someone that's very active. You know, I think we do a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So as we come towards the end of our our podcast, Chia and Munir, do you have any last things that you want to say to our listeners, to the students listening to our podcast?
As I mentioned earlier, ask for help. And one other thing is trying to be helpful to others as well. So I was reading something and I got into one really good quote that was like, if you want someone else to help you, then firstly, you should try to be helpful to others. So that's deep, but it has good meaning. So you should also try to be helpful to others. If you think there's some other people who have that thing, that ego that they don't want to talk about, and you know that, so you should be helpful to them. You should go to your instructors, teachers, support areas on campus and help them in their things, whatever they need, whatever the support they need on campus. There is support on campus. You just have to ask for that. So that is one thing I would like to mention.
So having that initiative to
to
go ahead and help.
Well, and like you said earlier too, sometimes it's really hard to reach out. So if we notice peers or friends struggling, we can reach out too.
Same thing. Try to be helpful.
Great.
Yeah.
I think from my end, you know, all students, you pay tuition, and and part of our, you know, we do have services on campus. And the reason why we have those services is for you. Like, we're here to serve you. So even if you are a little bit, hesitant to reach out. Like, that's what we're here for, is like, that's why we have wellness. That's why we have international Indigenous services, accessibility, the ITS help desk, registration, like, they're all for you to be able to be successful. And, college just isn't about learning whatever you're doing in your program, but it's also like, life lessons, regardless of what stage in life you are. And also to build, this is a great place to build lifelong friendships and connections, whether it's like work connections or future career connections or personal or family connections. So, or maybe even love sometimes too. Yeah. So I think that's really important. Like, I should say, we're here to support you. If maybe you do find someone on campus that might not get you the support that you need, ask them to refer you to someone, or, introduce you to someone that does have that support, or go to someone that you trust, whether it's a student or, a staff, even if they're not part of, like, they're not working in the department that has your solution, just asking them. They they could connect you with someone. So I think that's really important. And then there's always, it's just not limited to us. Like, there's so many great resources in the community. The Southern Alberta Ethnic Association is such a big association in Lethbridge, and it's so great to see all these different groups coming together under that umbrella as well. So, and they're great in terms of, like, homesickness and finding, that culture and, like, homesick, like, culture support, and sometimes language support as well. So, and there's so many things to learn just outside of academics at, in Lethbridge. So I think it's really great. So there's always something to do, whether I grew up here and sometimes, it's like, oh, there's nothing to do in Lethbridge, but there actually is. There's a lot to do in Lethbridge. So, but it's okay to want to have time for yourself too. It's just know that it's okay to be you. I think it's the biggest takeaway. And then when you need help, just ask. There's always someone that will support you.
It's great advice.
Yeah. All right. Thank you both so much for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights on multicultural perspectives and on mental health in college.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning into this episode of Fearless Journeys, Thriving in College. Remember, your mental health is important, and seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. We'll be back with more exciting topics to help you on your college journey.
Together we can break down the barriers surrounding mental health. Let's embrace diversity, challenge stigmas, and ensure every college student feels heard and supported. Let's make college a place where everyone can thrive.